The courtroom is quiet, but not because there isn't anything to say. No one expected this, so it's quiet. Kody Brown is sitting still at the defense table, his jaw tight and his eyes moving back and forth between the judge and the woman who is about to testify against him. Christine doesn't pay attention to him, not even once. And when she finally talks, the whole room changes. Because this isn't just a family fight anymore, it's a war. The courtroom smells faintly of polished wood and old paper, and the air is heavy with a sense of something that is about to break. The lights in the ceiling made a pale glow that was too bright to hide anything and too cold to comfort anyone. Kody moves his jacket around and his fingers shake just a little. Only someone who is paying close attention would notice. He still has that same confidence and energy that viewers have seen for years, even though he seems different on the outside. But today is different. A crack appeared. Christine is sitting across the room with her lawyer, with her hands folded and her back straight. Be calm, under control. But her eyes, they hold years of something that hasn't been worked out. Janelle is sitting quietly behind her, watching. Miri is farther back, far away, and almost not there. Robyn is the closest to Kody, and her face is already sad, as if she knows this day won't go the way they wanted. People stand up when the judge comes in. It's just a simple motion, but it feels like the start of something much bigger than a court case. It feels like the truth is coming out. On paper, the case is complicated because there are money problems, emotional damages, claims of manipulation, and broken promises in a plural marriage that used to work like a system. But deep down, this is personal. Very personal. Christine is the first person to speak. She walks slowly and on purpose. Every step sounds like it. Everyone's eyes are on you. Kody keeps an eye on her the whole time. Not with rage. Not with sadness. But more like disbelief, like part of him still doesn't get how it got to this point. She makes a promise. Her voice is steady. And then she sits down. There is a break. A long one. The kind that makes everyone uncomfortable by stretching just enough. Then her lawyer leans in. Christine, can you tell the court when things started to change? Christine lets out a soft breath. Not a big deal, not forced, just real. And then she starts. It didn't change all at once, she says. It was slow. Shh, like something is fading. Kody moves a little in his chair. She doesn't look at him. It started with distance, she says. Not distance in space, emotional. Her voice stays strong. But something in the room does. Her words start to make flashback take shape. Nights late. Conversations that don't mean anything. Times when choices were made without her. She talks about family meetings where she felt like her voice was getting smaller each time, where her worries were ignored, where things started to change in ways she couldn't explain but could feel. Then she says Robyn's name. The air gets tighter right away. Nobody moves. She became the center, Christine says with care, not just emotionally, structurally. Robyn looks down and tightens her hands together. Kody is leaning forward now. That isn't, he begins. Mr. Brown, the judge cuts in sharply. You'll get your turn. Again, silence. Christine goes on. She says, it wasn't about jealousy. It was about being out of balance. What she says is easy to understand. But they hit hard. She talks about how decisions about money, property, and time are all moving toward one household. Kody's face changes for the first time. This isn't just an emotional testimony anymore. This is something else, something that can be measured, something that can be proven. Janelle looks down and her face is unreadable, but her stillness says it all. Mary doesn't say anything. But her eyes blink. The lawyer for Christine moves closer. Can you give me a specific example? Christine gives a nod. Then she does something that no one saw coming. She takes out a piece of paper, a record of money, years ago, signed with names. And all of a sudden, the courtroom leans in. She holds it up and says, "This is when I knew something wasn't right." Kody's face gets tense. Robyn looks up quickly. The lawyer gives the document to the judge. "And what does this mean?" he asks. Christine is unsure. Only for a second, long enough to make things tense. After that, she answers. "It shows that money that was supposed to go to everyone was sent somewhere else." A murmur spreads through the room. Kody shakes his head right away. That's not what it means. But the harm has already been done. There is proof now. Not just feelings, not just remembering, something real. Something that can't be denied. The judge looks over the paper. The silence lasts longer. A lot. Awkward. Then the judge looks up. "We'll look at this closely," she says. Christine nods a little, but her eyes dart toward Kody for just a second. And there is no anger in that look, no sadness, just the end. The lawyer takes a step back. Not right now, no more questions. Christine lets out a slow breath. But she doesn't calm down, because she knows what's going to happen next. Cross-examination. Kody's lawyer stands. Sure. Sharp. Ready. There is another change in energy as he walks toward the stand. This time, it's colder. More aggressive. "Mrs. Brown," he starts, "you've painted a very emotional picture today." Christine doesn't say anything. "But feelings," he goes on, "aren't always facts, are they?" A break. Christine finally gives him a look. "No," she says softly. "But patterns are." The courtroom is quiet. Again, and Kody looks unsure for the first time. The lawyer smiles a little. "Then let's talk about patterns," he says. And at that moment, no one was ready for the case to take this turn. The lawyer doesn't rush, which makes it worse. Every step he takes toward Christine seems planned and controlled, like he already knows exactly where this is going to end up. When he finally stops in front of her, he tilts his head slightly and studies her like someone studies a story they're about to tear apart piece by piece. "You said patterns matter," he begins, his voice calm but with something sharper underneath. "So let's look at your pattern." Christine doesn't flinch, but her fingers tighten slightly in her lap, a detail small enough to miss unless you're watching closely. "Isn't it true," he continues, "that you had already emotionally withdrawn from the family long before any financial changes occurred?" Statements from who? Christine asks, her voice still controlled but carrying a sharper edge now, and the attorney smiles faintly. "From members of the family," he replies, letting the words hang in the air without naming names. And that's when the tension spikes again, because suddenly everyone in the room is wondering. The same thing, who said what, and how much of it is about to come out, and just when it feels like the pressure couldn't get any heavier, the story starts pulling in voices Christine didn't expect to hear against her. "Let's talk about your conversations with Janelle," the attorney continues. Flipping through his notes, and Janelle's head lifts slightly in the audience, her calm expression tightening just a fraction, "You expressed dissatisfaction, frustration, even resentment, long before this alleged financial imbalance, didn't you?" "From members of the family," the attorney says, letting the words hang in the air without naming names. This is when the tension spikes again, because everyone in the room is suddenly wondering the same thing. Who said what, and how much of it is about to come out? Just when it feels like the pressure couldn't get any heavier, the story starts pulling in voices Christine didn't expect to hear against her. "Let's talk about your conversations with Janelle," the attorney continues, flipping through his notes. Janelle's head lifts slightly in the audience, and her calm expression tightens just a fraction. "You expressed dissatisfaction, frustration, even resentment long before this alleged financial imbalance, didn't you? Concerns that included statements like, 'I feel like I'm already on my own,' correct?" The attorney asks, stepping closer and sharpening his tone. Christine exhales slowly, her gaze dropping for just a second before returning forward. "I expressed concerns," she corrects. There's a difference. And that hits harder than expected, because it's not just a question anymore, it's a quote, something specific, something real. Christine's jaw tightens slightly, and she says, "Yes, I said that," and Kody leans back, crossing his arms now, his posture shifting into something more defensive but also more confident, like he's starting to believe this might not end the way he feared. So if you already felt alone, the attorney presses, how can you claim the financial decisions caused the breakdown rather than the breakdown causing your interpretation of those decisions? And for a moment, Christine doesn't answer, and that moment feels longer than any before it. Because now it's not just about what happened, it's about how it's being framed, how it's being understood, how easily the narrative could flip if she says the wrong thing, and right here the entire case hangs on whether she can hold her ground or gets pulled into his version of the story. Because feeling alone, she finally says, her voice firmer now, and being treated unequally are not the same thing. And the courtroom stills again, the clarity of her answer cutting through the tension like a line drawn in the sand, but the attorney doesn't back off, not even a little. Then let's move to something more concrete, he says, turning toward the judge briefly before looking back at Christine. You presented a financial document earlier, and Christine nods slightly. Yes, she says, and the attorney picks up a folder, pulling out a sheet of paper. What if I told you, he begins, his tone shifting just enough to signal something bigger is coming, that this document doesn't tell the full story. Kody's eyes lock onto him right away, and Robyn straightens up and focuses on him. What do you mean? Christine asks, and for the first time, there is a hint of tension in her voice that wasn't there before. The lawyer holds up another document and says, I mean, there are records, discussions, and agreements that provide context you chose not to include. A murmur goes through the room again, because now the evidence isn't just supporting her claim, it's being challenged, expanded, and complicated. I didn't choose to exclude anything, Christine says quickly, and the lawyer raises an eyebrow. No, then maybe, he says slowly, we should let your own words provide that context. The courtroom goes completely still because everyone knows what that means, a recording. Just like that, the whole case goes from testimony to something much more dangerous. Your Honor, the attorney continues, we have an audio recording dated 2 years prior to the financial document in question, and Christine's face changes, not dramatically, not in a way that screams panic, but enough for anyone paying attention to see that this was not expected. A recording of what? The judge asks, her tone firm but curious, and the attorney glances at Christine before answering, a private conversation between Mrs. Brown and another member of the family, and the silence that follows is heavier than anything before it. Because now this isn't just about interpretation or memory, it's about something that can be played, heard, judged in real time. We request permission to play the recording, he says. And Christine's attorney is already on his feet, objecting, arguing about context, about consent, about relevance, but the judge raises her hand, silencing the room once again. I'll allow it, she says, but we will review its admissibility carefully, and just like that, the moment becomes inevitable. The device clicks softly as it's activated, and then, through the speakers, Christine's voice fills the courtroom. Softer, more vulnerable, unmistakably real. I don't think this family works anymore, the recording says, and every single person in the room feels that line hit. Differently, Kody's eyes widen slightly, Robyn's hand rises to her mouth, Janelle looks down again, her expression unreadable, and Christine sits perfectly still, listening to her own past echo back at her. I feel like no matter what we do, the recorded voice continues. It's already broken. And the attorney lets it play just long enough for the impact to settle before pausing it, turning back to Christine with that same measured expression. That doesn't sound like someone reacting to financial decisions, he says quietly. That sounds like someone who had already decided the outcome. And the weight of that statement settles over the room like something final, something dangerous, something that could undo everything she's built so far, and in this moment, you can feel the entire narrative starting to tilt, like one wrong answer could collapse everything she's fought to prove. Christine inhales slowly, her eyes closing for just a fraction of a second before she opens them again, steady, focused. You're right, she says, and the admission lands harder than denial ever could have. The courtroom tensing again as if bracing for what comes next. I did say that, she. Continues, but you're leaving out why. And now it's her turn to shift the energy, her turn to take control back, even if just for a moment, and the attorney watches her carefully. No longer smiling, no longer relaxed, because now he knows she's not going to break as easily as he hoped then. Explain it, he says, and Christine leans forward slightly, her voice stronger now, more grounded. I said that because by that point, the decisions had already been made, she says. The distance was already there. The imbalance was already happening. I wasn't predicting the future. I was. Describing the present, and the silence that follows feels different this time. Less uncertain, more divided, because now the room isn't just listening, it's choosing sides, weighing interpretations, deciding what feels more true, and just when it seems like she's regained her footing, you can. Sense that something even bigger is still coming, something that could change everything again. The attorney nods slowly, as if acknowledging her answer, but there's something in his expression that suggests he's not finished, not even close. Then let's listen to the rest, he says, pressing play. Again, and as Christine's recorded voice begins to speak once more, the tension rises all over again, sharper, heavier, because now everyone understands this isn't just one moment being questioned, it's the entire story, and it's far from over. The recording resumes, and this time the room feels even smaller, like the walls themselves are leaning in to listen. Christine's voice coming through the speakers, softer but clearer now, stripped of courtroom control, stripped of preparation, just raw and unfiltered. I stayed longer than I should. The recorded voice says, and a visible shift runs through the courtroom, subtle but undeniable. Because this isn't just reflection anymore, it's confession, and Kody's posture stiffens, his jaw tightening again as if he's trying to hold something back, while Robyn's eyes flicker rapidly. Between the speaker and Christine, searching for something to hold on to, something to make sense of what's unfolding, I kept telling myself it would balance out. The recording continues, that eventually it would feel equal again, and Christine sits perfectly still, her expression composed, but her breathing slightly heavier now, controlled but not effortless, but it never did, her voice says through the speaker, and the silence that follows feels louder than anything else, like the room itself is reacting, and just when it feels like the recording is supporting her, it begins to twist. In a way no one expected, the attorney steps closer again. Watching Christine carefully, you believed it was already unequal, he says, his tone calm but pressing, long before the document you presented today, and Christine doesn't look at him immediately, her gaze fixed forward as if she's still listening to that past version of herself. Yes, she answers finally. Because it was, and the attorney tilts his head slightly, or because you felt that way, he counters, and now there's a sharper edge in his voice, the kind that tries to blur the line between fact and perception. Feelings don't create financial records, Christine replies, her tone steady again, but there's something deeper underneath it now. Something more resolved, like she's no longer reacting, she's choosing her ground carefully, but they can influence how you interpret them. The attorney shoots back, and for a moment, it feels like the two arguments are colliding without either one giving way. The tension building again, heavier, tighter, and right here, you can feel the courtroom splitting. Not just over what happened, but over what it means. The attorney turns slightly, pacing a few steps as if organizing his next move, then stops. Let's bring clarity then, he says, reaching back toward the table, and when he turns again, he's holding something new, something that instantly pulls attention. A printed transcript, thicker than the others, more detailed. This is the full transcript of that conversation. He explains, not just the portion we've played, and Christine's eyes flicker for just a second. Not fear, not panic, but recognition. Like she understands exactly where this is going now, and in this transcript, he continues, flipping through the pages slowly. Deliberately, you mention specific decisions, specific actions, that contradict what you've told this court today, and that lands harder than anything before it. Because now it's not just about tone or emotion, it's about contradiction, about credibility, about truth. I don't believe that's accurate, Christine says, but her voice carries a slight tension now, the kind that comes when you know the ground beneath you isn't as solid as it was a moment ago. Then, let's read it, the attorney says. And without waiting, he begins. I agreed to it because I thought it would keep things stable, he reads aloud, then looks up. What were you referring to there? And Christine inhales slowly, her eyes narrowing slightly as she searches her memory, or maybe chooses her words. A property decision, she says, one that affected all of us, and the attorney nods. A decision you agreed to. He emphasizes, yes, she says, under pressure, and that word changes everything, because now the story shifts again, from agreement to coercion, from choice to influence, and the courtroom reacts instantly. A ripple of movement, a shift in posture, a renewed attention, and just when it seems like the narrative is stabilizing again, the tension sharpens into something even more dangerous. Pressure from who? The attorney asks, his voice cutting through the room, and for the first time, Christine turns her head slightly, not toward him, but toward Kody, just for a second, just enough to make the entire room follow her gaze. From the structure itself, she says, turning back forward, and the answer is careful, almost too careful, like she's avoiding something more direct, and the attorney catches it immediately. The structure doesn't sign documents, he says, his tone firmer now. People do. And that line lands with precision, because it forces the question everyone is already thinking but hasn't heard spoken out loud. Who made the decisions, who held the control, who benefited, and the silence that follows feels sharper than before, more focused, more demanding, and right here, you can feel the moment building towards something that can't be taken back once it's said. Christine's hands tighten slightly again, her composure still intact but no longer effortless. Kody led those decisions, she says finally. And there it is, clear, direct, undeniable, and Kody reacts instantly, leaning forward, his voice breaking through before he can stop himself. That's not fair, he says. Louder than before, and the judge immediately calls for order, but the damage is already done. Because now it's not just testimony, it's confrontation, it's personal, it's exposed. You made your own choices, Kody continues. Unable to hold back now, you agreed, because I trusted you. Christine cuts in, and the room freezes again, the interruption, the emotion, the rawness of it slicing through everything else, and for a moment, no one moves, no one speaks, because this isn't just a legal exchange anymore, it's something much deeper, something that's been building long before. This courtroom ever came into the picture, and just when it feels like everything is unraveling, the truth starts coming out faster than anyone can control. The judge's voice cuts through again, restoring order, but the tension doesn't fade. It just settles. Heavier now, more real, we will. Proceed one at a time, she says firmly, and the attorney takes a step back, letting the moment breathe just enough before stepping forward again. Mrs. Brown, he says. His voice now quieter but more precise. You've talked about trust, pressure, and imbalance, but you haven't made it clear what you mean by intent. That word hits differently, colder, more calculated, because intent is what makes actions into responsibility, into something the court can act on. Are you saying that Mr. Brown intentionally created this imbalance? On what basis? Christine exhales slowly, her eyes steady now. No hesitation left. Yes, she says, and the simplicity of it makes it hit even harder. Kody's expression changes again. Not disbelief this time, not uncertainty, but something closer to anger, restrained but visible, while Robyn shakes her head slightly, her lips pressed together as if silently rejecting what she's hearing. The attorney asks immediately, pressing forward before the moment can settle, and Christine leans forward slightly, her voice stronger now, more grounded than at any point before, on a pattern of decisions that consistently favored one outcome, one household, one dynamic, she says, and thee. Courtroom listens differently now, not just to her words, but to the weight behind them, the consistency, the clarity, the conviction, and just when it feels like she's finally taking control of the narrative, something unexpected shifts the entire direction again. The attorney pauses, then glances toward Kody briefly before turning back. Then perhaps, he says slowly, we should hear from someone who was part of those decisions, directly. And the implication lands instantly, the room reacting before he even says the name, because everyone knows who he's about to call, and as the tension rises one more time, sharper than ever, the attorney finishes the sentence, we call Robyn Brown to the stand, and in that moment, every eye in the courtroom turns, because whatever comes next is going to change everything. Robyn rises slowly, almost hesitantly, as if each step toward the witness stand carries more weight than she expected, her hand brushing lightly against the table as she passes Kody, and for a brief moment their eyes meet, a silent exchange that no one else fully understands but everyone can feel. Something unspoken, something loaded, and when she finally reaches the stand, her composure is already fragile, her breathing slightly uneven as she takes the oath. Her voice soft but trembling at the edges, and as she sits, the entire courtroom seems to hold its breath again, waiting, watching, measuring every small movement, every flicker of emotion on her face, because this isn't just another testimony. This is the moment where everything could either unravel completely or fall into place in a way no one saw coming, and just when it feels like the tension has reached its peak, it begins to shift into something far more personal and unpredictable. The attorney approaches carefully this time, his tone noticeably softer, almost sympathetic, a strategic contrast to the intensity he used with Christine. Mrs. starts by asking, Brown, can you tell me what your role is in making decisions about the family's money? Robyn swallows and clasps her hands tightly in front of her. I was part of discussions, she says in a low, careful voice, but I didn't control anything. That answer lands softly on the surface, but it makes waves underneath because it's so careful, almost too careful, like she's picking each word with care. Were you aware of the document Christine presented earlier? Yes, Robyn says, and Kody shifts again in his seat, his attention locked on her now, more intense than before, as if everything depends on what she says next. And what was your understanding of that situation? Agreed upon, the attorney says, and Robyn hesitates, her eyes dropping for a moment before rising again. That it was agreed upon, she says, and the room reacts in a subtle way, with a shift in energy and a tightening of focus. The word agreed has already been questioned, reframed, and turned into something much more complicated. Agreed by everyone? The attorney gently pushes Robyn, and her hesitation comes back, this time for longer and more clearly. I believed so, she says, and that word, believed, changes the tone again. Belief isn't certainty, and everyone in the room hears that difference clearly. Right here, the story starts to bend in a way that no one can fully predict. Christine watches her closely now, her expression unreadable, but her attention unwavering. Janelle leans slightly forward, her eyes narrowing as if she's trying to catch something hidden between the lines. Mary stays still, almost too still, as if she's already seen this play out before in a different form. Did you ever feel, the attorney continues, that decisions were being made in a way that favored you? And the question hits harder than expected because it's direct, personal, and puts Robyn in a position where any answer has consequences. For a moment, she doesn't say anything, her lips parting slightly as if looking for the right words, but not finding them right away. No, she finally says, but the word comes out softer than she meant it to, and the attorney notices, of course he does. No, not even once? He says again softly, and Robyn's calm starts to break down a little. Her hands get tighter, and her shoulders rise just a little. I didn't see it that way, she corrects, and that correction is enough to change the whole weight of her answer. Now it's not a denial, it's a perspective, and perspectives can be questioned, challenged, and broken down. Just when it seems like she might be able to take control again, the pressure starts to close in from all sides. But you were aware, the attorney continues, that Christine felt differently, and Robyn nods, her eyes glistening now under the harsh courtroom lights. Yes, she admits, she told me, and Christine's expression flickers for just a second, something between recognition and restraint. And how did you respond? Did you ever doubt that it might be true? The lawyer asks, and Robyn exhales shakily. I tried to reassure her, she says. I told her it wasn't intentional, and that word intentional echoes back to the question Christine answered earlier, tying the testimonies together in a way that feels almost deliberate, almost strategic. Mistas. Brown, the lawyer pushes, and now Robyn's silence is longer, heavier, and more revealing than any answer could be. Her eyes drop again, and when she finally speaks, her voice is barely above a whisper. I didn't want to believe it, she says, and that admission lands with a different kind of weight. Not sharp, not explosive, but slow and sinking, like something settling into place that can't be undone. In this moment, you can feel the emotional core of the story shifting from conflict to something much more complicated and human. Kody's expression tightens again, this time with something closer to frustration. Maybe even fear, because this isn't going the way he needs it to, not anymore. Brown, the lawyer says, his voice still calm but more focused now, do you think Mr. Brown treated all households the same? The question feels bigger and heavier than it sounds because it's not about documents or conversations anymore. It's about judgment, perception, and truth in its most personal form. Robyn looks at Kody again for a second, and in that glance, there's hesitation, conflict, and something unresolved. I believe he tried, she says finally, and the answer is careful, almost fragile. The courtroom reacts again because everyone knows that trying is not the same as doing. But did he succeed? Did you benefit from those moments when he didn't succeed? The attorney asks right away. This time, Robyn doesn't answer right away. She stays quiet, her breathing uneven, and her composure slips more and more with each passing second. When she finally does speak, her voice is quieter than ever. Not always, she says. At that moment, everything changes again. The story isn't just being argued, it's being confirmed piece by piece by a source no one expected to lean this far in that direction. Just when it seems like the truth is finally coming into focus, something deeper begins to surface. The attorney steps back and lets the weight of her words settle before asking his next question. And the question cuts deeper than any before it, because now it's not just about awareness, it's about advantage, about gain, about responsibility, and Robyn's reaction is immediate, her head shaking slightly, her eyes widening as if the implication itself feels too heavy to hold. I didn't ask. For that, she says quickly, her voice breaking just enough to reveal the strain underneath, I didn't want that. And her words carry emotion now, raw and unfiltered. But emotion alone doesn't answer the question, and the attorney knows it, but it happened. He says quietly, not accusing, not aggressive, just stating it as something that exists whether anyone wanted it or not, and Robyn's silence returns. Heavier than before, her eyes filling now, her composure slipping further as the reality of the moment settles in. And right here, the emotional tension reaches a point where truth and guilt start to blur together. Christine watches her, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with something more complicated. Something that suggests this isn't about winning anymore, it's about being heard. Finally, fully, and as the silence stretches once more, the attorney delivers one. Final question, softer than the others, but somehow more powerful. If you could go back, he says, would you change anything? And the courtroom holds its breath again, because this isn't just about facts anymore. It's about regret, about reflection, about everything that led to this moment, and Robyn closes her eyes briefly, a single tear slipping down her cheek before she opens them again, her voice trembling but clear. Yes, she says, I would have listened sooner, and that answer lands differently than anything before it, not as an argument, not as a defense, but as something real, something undeniable, something that can't be cross-examined away, and as the attorney steps back, the room remains still, heavy. With everything that's been said and everything that hasn't. Because now the story isn't just about what happened, it's about what could have been different, and as Robyn sits there, fragile but composed, the question that lingers in the air isn't just about the past, it's about what comes next. And just when it feels like the courtroom has reached its emotional limit, the next move threatens to break it all over again. The courtroom doesn't recover from Robyn's last words, not immediately, because they linger in the air like something unfinished, something that refuses to settle, and as she slowly steps down from the stand, her movements careful, almost unsteady, every eye follows her, not with judgment alone, but with something more complicated now, something mixed with understanding, doubt, and a quiet realization that the truth in this room is not as simple as anyone wanted it to be. And Kody watches her return, his expression unreadable at first, but when she sits beside him, there's a subtle shift. In his posture, a tension that wasn't there before, like he's realizing that the ground beneath him is no longer as solid as it once felt, and just when it seems like the emotional peak has passed, the case takes a colder, more calculated turn. The judge calls for a brief pause. The gavel tapping. Lightly as the courtroom exhales in fragments, conversations whispering through the space like low currents, attorneys leaning in close to their clients, papers shifting, strategies adjusting in real time, and Christine sits still through it all, her gaze fixed ahead, her expression composed but distant, as if she's already moved past this moment and is bracing for the next one, while Janelle leans toward her slightly, whispering something too quiet to hear, but enough to draw a small, almost imperceptible nod in response, and Miri remains where she is. Silent, observant, her eyes moving. Between each of them, as if she's piecing together something no one else fully sees yet, and when the judge returns, the energy shifts again, sharper now, more focused, less emotional, and more strategic. Because whatever comes next is not about reflection anymore, it's about impact. Call your next. Witness, the judge says, her voice steady, and for a brief moment there's hesitation, a pause that feels intentional, and then Christine's attorney stands, straightening his jacket as he steps forward. We call Janelle Brown, he says, and the name lands differently than the others, not with shock, not with surprise, but with anticipation, because Janelle has been quiet, almost too quiet, and that kind of silence often carries more than words ever could, and right here, the story shifts again, from what's been said to what's been held back until now. Janelle rises with a calm that contrasts everything else in the room, her movement steady, her expression controlled, but there's something in her eyes, something sharper, something more resolved, like she's not here to defend, not here to explain, but here to clarify something that's been misunderstood for far too long. And as she takes the stand and the oath is administered, her voice is firm, grounded, lacking the tremble that marked Robyn's testimony, and when she sits, she doesn't look at Kody, not even for a second, Mrs. Brown. The lawyer says in a respectful but direct tone, "You've heard the testimonies given so far." Janelle nods slightly and says, "Yes, I have," without any hesitation or uncertainty. She sounds calm and confident, which makes the mood change again. "Do you agree with Christine's assessment of the family's financial structure? Can you elaborate?" he asks, and Janelle leans back a little and rests her hands calmly. "Yes," she says simply, and the simplicity of it hits harder than a long explanation ever could. There's no extra detail, no emotion clouding it, just agreement. Clear and direct. Kody shifts again, this time more noticeably, his jaw tightening as if he's getting ready for something he can't control. The lawyer goes on, and Janelle exhales slowly, her gaze steady. "It wasn't balanced," she says, "not in the way it was supposed to be." These words echo the theme that has been building throughout the case, but coming from her, they have a different kind of weight, more analytical, more grounded in observation than emotion. "In what way?" Decisions were centralized, she says, and over time, that central point became narrower. The way she says it is careful, precise, and almost clinical, but it paints a clear picture that doesn't rely on feelings but on structure, on patterns, on something harder to dismiss. Just when it feels like the story is solidifying, Janelle says something no one was expecting. At some point, she continues, "I stopped questioning it." That line hits with quiet force because it suggests more than imbalance. It suggests acceptance, resignation, something deeper than conflict. Why? The lawyer asks, and Janelle's face changes slightly. Not breaking, but softening. Because it was easier, she says, and because pushing back didn't change anything. That answer hits differently, not as an accusation or a defense, but as a fact, something that has been lived and experienced over time. The courtroom is silent. Did you ever benefit from these decisions? Not in the long run, Janelle says, and the answer is complicated, layered, and suggests that whatever short-term outcomes existed were overshadowed by something bigger, something more important. Can you explain that? Short-term gains don't matter if the foundation isn't stable, she says, and that line makes sense in a different way, one that ties everything together in a way that feels undeniable. Right here, the emotional weight of the case turns into something more concrete, something harder to argue against. Kody exhales sharply and shakes his head slightly, as if rejecting the whole framing. When his attorney rises for cross-examination, the change is immediate, more aggressive, and more pointed. "Mrs. Brown," he begins, "you've described a system that you participated in willingly," and Janelle meets his gaze without hesitation. "Yes," she says, and there's no defensiveness in her tone, no attempt to avoid responsibility, just acknowledgement. "So isn't it true," he continues, "that you're just as accountable for these outcomes as anyone else?" "Brown," he starts, "you've described a system that you participated in willingly," and Janelle meets his gaze without hesitation. "Yes," she says, and there's no defensiveness in her tone, no attempt to avoid responsibility, just acknowledgement. "So isn't it true," he continues, "that you're just as accountable for these outcomes as anyone else?" And the question is sharp, designed to redistribute blame, to dilute the focus, but Janelle doesn't flinch. "Accountability and control are not the same thing," she replies, and the precision of her response shifts the momentum instantly. "But you had a voice," the attorney presses, and Janelle nods. "Yes," she says, "but not an equal one," and the distinction lands cleanly, firmly, leaving little room for reinterpretation. "That's your perception," he counters, and Janelle leans forward slightly now, her tone still calm but carrying more weight. "No," she says, "it's a pattern, and..." That word echoes again, tying back to everything that's been said before, reinforcing the consistency of the narrative that's been building piece by piece, and just when it seems like the case has reached a point of clarity, something unexpected threatens to disrupt it entirely. The attorney pauses, then glances toward the judge. "Your Honor," he says, "we'd like to introduce a new piece of evidence," and the room reacts instantly, the tension rising again, sharper than before, because new evidence at this stage means one thing, something significant, something potentially disruptive. And as he lifts a sealed envelope from the table, the weight of the moment becomes undeniable. "This," he continues, "is a record that has not yet been presented, one that directly relates to the distribution of assets discussed today," and Christine's expression shifts for the first time in A. While not dramatically, but enough to signal that this was not expected. While Janelle's gaze sharpens, her calm demeanor tightening just slightly, and Kody watches closely, his earlier uncertainty replaced now with something closer to anticipation. Like this might finally be the moment that turns everything back in his favor. "We request permission to submit it into evidence," the attorney says, and the judge studies the envelope for a moment before nodding. "Proceed," she says, and as the envelope is opened and the document inside is revealed, the entire courtroom leans in once more. Because whatever is written on that page is about to change everything, and just when it feels like the truth has finally taken shape, a new revelation threatens to rewrite the entire story from the ground up.